AITA for revealing why I left home at 13 after my mom lied during my uncle's will reading. I'm Hannah, 28, and for most of my life, family meant my Uncle Arthur. He was my father's older brother, but calling him my uncle never felt like enough. Arthur was the person who signed my school forms, sat in folding chairs at parent nights, waited outside therapy appointments, and bought me a winter coat without making me feel guilty for needing one. He was quiet to the point of awkwardness. He kept grocery receipts in old coffee cans, labeled spare keys with masking tape, and wrote birthday cards like they were legal promises. On my 14th birthday, his card said, "You have a home here for as long as you need one." On my 18th, it said, "Being grown does not cancel being cared for." I still have every card in a shoebox under my bed. For years, those cards were the only proof I had that someone had chosen me on purpose. Arthur never made love feel dramatic. He made it show up on time. My biological parents, Carol and Richard, were different. Nothing in our house was ever officially wrong, but somehow everything was always my fault. If my mother snapped at dinner, I had pushed her too far. If I cried afterward, I was too sensitive. If I tried to explain what had happened, she would lean back in her chair and say, "Stop performing." My father's favorite sentence was, "Just don't make your mother more upset." He said it when I was 9 and Carol accused me of losing a bracelet she later found in her own bathroom drawer. He said it when I was 11 and she read my journal, then punished me for what I had written about her. He said it when I was 12 and I asked why my younger brother, Caleb, could yell without consequences while I got grounded for raising my voice. Richard acted as if neutrality meant standing behind Carol while she aimed at me. By the time I was 13, I had learned to listen for the small signs that a bad night was coming. Cabinet doors closing too hard, my mother exhaling through her nose, my father turning the television louder so he would not have to hear us. The night I left started over a permission slip. I had forgotten to put it on the kitchen counter. It was still in my backpack, signed, but Carol decided the mistake proved I was irresponsible, dishonest, and determined to embarrass her. I said, "It's signed. I can bring it tomorrow." She said, "That isn't the point." It was never the point. The argument spread from the permission slip to my grades, my attitude, the cost of groceries, the tension in her marriage, and finally my existence. Caleb was 7. He stood halfway down the hall in dinosaur pajamas, watching through the railing. Richard stayed at the table and rubbed his forehead. I remember asking him, "Are you going to say anything?" He looked at Carol instead of me. That was when she called Arthur. I did not hear the whole conversation. I only heard her side. "She is impossible." A pause. "No, I am not doing this anymore." Another pause. Then fine. Maybe you can fix what we couldn't. Arthur arrived 40 minutes later in his old car. He came inside, spoke to my parents in the kitchen, and then found me sitting on my bedroom floor. 2 black trash bags were beside me. Carol had put most of my clothes in them. Not folded. Just shoved in. Arthur looked at the bags, then at me. "Do you have your school things?" I nodded. "Medication. In the bathroom. Get it." I waited for him to tell me this was temporary. A cooling-off period. A weekend away. He did not lie to me. He carried one bag to the car while I carried the other. My mother stood in the front doorway with her arms folded. She did not hug me. She did not say goodbye. My father came out only after I was buckled in. He bent slightly toward the open window and said, "Give your mother some time." I asked, "How much?" He did not answer. Arthur put the car in reverse. As we pulled away, he said, "You're not sleeping where you're unwanted." I cried so quietly I thought he might not notice. He did, but he did not demand that I talk. He drove with both hands on the wheel and stopped at a 24-hour diner because I had not eaten dinner. He ordered me pancakes. I could barely swallow them. The next morning, he cleared a room that had been half storage and half office. The sheets did not match. One dresser drawer stuck unless you lifted it while pulling. There was an old lamp with a crooked shade and a handwritten note on the door that said, "Hannah's room. Knock." It was the first bedroom door I had ever had that adults treated as mine. For the first few weeks, Arthur handled everything without making speeches. He drove me to school, met with the counselor, took me to a doctor, and arranged therapy. He bought notebooks, socks, shampoo, and a coat because mine was too small. He saved every receipt. At the time, I thought it was one of his strange habits. Years later, I understood that Arthur knew my mother. He knew that one day she might claim he had stolen me or turned me against her, so he documented every appointment, every school expense, every attempt at contact, and every dollar he spent keeping me safe. The legal process took several months. I was old enough to understand that papers were being filed but not old enough to understand all the language. Arthur told me my parents had agreed that I would live with him permanently, and that a judge had approved his guardianship. I asked whether they wanted me back. He took a long time before answering. "No," he said. "But that is a failure in them, not a defect in you." That was as close as Arthur came to insulting anyone. My parents did not attend the final hearing. They did not visit on weekends. They did not call on my birthday. Carol sent one message through Arthur that first year. It said I needed to stop creating drama by asking relatives why I had not been invited to holiday dinners. Arthur printed the message and put it in a file. When I asked why he kept ugly things, he said, "Don't throw away records just because people call them ugly. Sometimes ugly paper tells the truth." Carol's version of the story spread faster than mine. According to her, I had run away because Arthur had more money and fewer rules. I was spoiled. I was ungrateful. I had rejected my mother. I had chosen comfort over blood. Arthur was not rich. He owned his house, drove old cars, repaired appliances until replacement parts stopped existing, and compared prices on canned soup. But he had stability, and to people who wanted to believe Carol, stability looked like wealth. At 15, I tried to correct Aunt Elaine at a family funeral. She handed me a paper plate near the dessert table and said, "Your mother says you never gave her a chance." I stared at her. "Did she tell you she told me not to come back?" Elaine's expression tightened. "Your mother suffered too." I was 13. Sometimes adults make decisions children don't understand. I said, "I understood the trash bags. She told me not to make a scene." At 17, I tried again when a cousin asked why I hated my parents. "I don't hate them," I said. "They gave guardianship to Arthur." The cousin looked uncomfortable and replied, "That isn't what your mom says." That sentence followed me for years. "That isn't what your mom says." As if my childhood had been a debate and Carol had gotten to the microphone first. Arthur never forced me to forgive them. He also never encouraged me to spend my life fighting every relative who preferred the cleaner story. "Correct the record once," he told me. "After that, watch what people do with the correction." Most of them did nothing. They kept inviting Carol and Richard to dinners. They kept telling me that blood was blood. They kept saying I should move past it for peace, although the peace they wanted depended on me accepting blame for something done to me. Caleb grew up inside Carol's version. I saw him only a handful of times after I left. When he was 12, he avoided me at a wedding. When he was 16, he stared at me across a funeral reception like I had personally damaged him. He was 20 when he finally spoke to me without Carol nearby. We were standing near a coat rack at another relative's anniversary party. He said, "Why didn't you ever come back?" I answered, "I wasn't allowed to." His face hardened. "Mom said you refused." "I was 13, Caleb. You could have called." I did. Twice. The first card came back unopened. Arthur stopped making me try after the second. He looked confused for half a second, then defensive. "That's not what she told me." There it was again. I said, "I know." He walked away before I could say more. Arthur watched from across the room. On the drive home, he did not tell me Caleb would understand someday. Arthur did not make promises on behalf of other people. He only said, "You told him the truth. Leave him responsible for what he does with it." Arthur died when he was 68. There was no dramatic final conversation. He had been tired for a few months, then tests became appointments, appointments became treatments, and treatments became a hospital room with a chair that hurt my back. The last clear thing he said to me was about the keys to the back shed. "Blue tag," he whispered. I laughed even while crying. "I know." "No, you don't. You always grab the green one." He was right. He died 2 days later. The house felt wrong without him. His worn recliner still faced the television. 3 old mugs sat upside down beside the sink. A note on the refrigerator reminded him to buy light bulbs. The blue-tagged key hung exactly where he had said it would. I paid the funeral home invoice from my savings because I could not stand the thought of waiting for probate to handle it. I chose the plain wood casket because Arthur hated decorative waste. I put one of his pins in his jacket pocket. Carol appeared at the funeral in black, crying loudly enough that people turned before she entered the room. She had not visited Arthur during his illness. She had not called me once. But at the service she held both of Elaine's hands and said, "He always wanted this family together." When she approached me, her eyes were already wet. "Hannah," she said softly, as if we had spoken the week before, "this is not the time for distance." I looked at her hand reaching toward my arm and stepped back. "He wanted honesty," I said. "That's different." Her mouth tightened, but only for a second. Too many people were watching. After the burial, Elaine brought a casserole to Arthur's house. She stood in the kitchen looking at his labeled cabinets and said, "Your mother is taking this very hard." I put the casserole in the refrigerator. She barely spoke to him. They were siblings-in-law for decades. "No. She's taking being watched very hard." Elaine sighed. "Please don't start." I did not. I had learned that saying one clear sentence and stopping often made people more uncomfortable than arguing. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived from Mr. Lawson, Arthur's attorney and executor. I had met him several times over the years. He was a formal man with silver hair, careful diction, and the emotional range of a courthouse clock. Arthur liked him because he never misplaced paper and never used 3 words when one precise word would do. The letter gave the date for the will reading and included one sentence that made me read it twice. Mr. Arthur also left a conditional sealed directive to be reviewed only if circumstances described in his estate instructions occur. I called Mr. Lawson. "What circumstances?" "I cannot discuss the contents of the directive before the reading." "Do I need to be worried?" "No," he said. Then after a pause, "But you should be prepared." That was practically a confession coming from him. He asked me to come to his office the next morning to review the guardianship record because Arthur had authorized me to receive certified copies after his death. The file was thicker than I expected. I had seen the court order before. I knew my parents had signed consent forms. What I had never seen was the agreement attached to them. Carol and Richard had not reluctantly allowed Arthur to help during a difficult season. They had voluntarily transferred responsibility for me, waived future claims to reimbursement, and agreed not to interfere with his guardianship. There was also a documented payment, $18,000. The agreement described it as settlement of claimed household expenses, transition costs, and any future financial demand related to my care. The bank statement showed Arthur's cashier's check. The back of the copy showed both Carol's and Richard's endorsements. I stared at their signatures until the ink blurred. "What was this?" I asked. Mr. Lawson folded his hands. "Your parents claimed that taking over your care would create financial complications for them. Your uncle wanted the guardianship completed without prolonged litigation. The payment resolved those claims. They made him pay them to take me? I would characterize it more carefully in a legal setting. I'm not in a legal setting." His expression softened by perhaps 1 degree. "No," he said. "You are not." I asked whether Arthur had known I had never seen it. "Yes." "Why didn't he tell me?" "He believed you had already been made to feel like a burden. He did not want you to think a financial agreement defined your value." I looked down at the papers. "He should have told me." "Possibly." That answer made me trust Mr. Lawson more than a defense of Arthur would have. Arthur had protected me, but he was not perfect. Sometimes he decided what pain I could handle without asking me. I understood why. I still wished he had trusted me sooner. Mr. Lawson slid a plain manila envelope across the desk. Inside were courthouse-certified copies of the guardianship order, the signed transfer documents, and the financial agreement. "Keep these," he said. "What is in the sealed directive?" "I cannot answer that unless it is triggered." "What triggers it?" He adjusted the edge of the file until it aligned with the desk. "An allegation concerning the circumstances under which you entered Mr. Arthur's care, made in connection with a demand against the estate." I leaned back. "My mother." Your uncle was familiar with patterns. That same evening Carol called. I almost let it go to voicemail, but I answered because I wanted to know what she wanted before the will reading. Her voice was gentle. I've been thinking about you. No, you haven't. She ignored that. Arthur's passing should bring us together, not divide us. We weren't together before he died. Hannah, I'm trying. What do you need? She was quiet for 2 seconds. Then she said, Did Arthur ever discuss his plans with you? There it was. No. He always cared deeply about family. He cared deeply about people who showed up. That is exactly the kind of comment that makes everything harder. I waited. She continued, You're young. You don't need everything he had. I don't know what he left. But if he put the house in your name, you understand that it belongs to the family. It belonged to Arthur. You know what I mean? Yes, I said. I do. Her softness disappeared. Don't embarrass your uncle by acting like his money is only yours. You didn't call me young when I was 13. She inhaled sharply. I will not be punished forever for one impossible period of my life. You're not being punished. You're asking about a dead man's property before his will has even been read. I am asking for fairness. No. You're checking inventory. She hung up. I saved the call log and wrote down what she had said while it was fresh. Then I emailed Mr. Lawson a short summary. I did not post anything. I did not call relatives. I did not warn Carol about the documents. Arthur had spent 15 years teaching me not to wrestle with people who benefited from confusion. Keep copies. Remember dates. Let them commit to the lie before answering it. So I waited. The will reading took place in Mr. Lawson's conference room 9 days after the funeral. The room was too small for the number of people Carol had brought. She arrived with Richard, Caleb, Elaine, 2 other relatives, and one cousin's husband who had no reason to be there except that Carol wanted an audience. A box of tissues sat near the center of the table. Carol pulled it closer before she even sat down. Richard lowered himself into the chair beside her and stared at his hands. Caleb, now 22, took a seat at the far end. He looked older than the last time I had seen him, but he had the same habit of tightening his jaw when he was confused. He glanced at me once, then looked away. Elaine sat between us like she thought her body could prevent an explosion. Mr. Lawson placed several documents on the table. Behind them was a sealed cream-colored envelope. Arthur's handwriting covered the front in black ink. Open only upon the condition described in Article 9. I recognized the heavy pressure of his pen. Carol followed my eyes. What is that? She asked. Mr. Lawson said. A conditional directive. About what? If it becomes relevant, I will explain. She dabbed at dry eyes with a tissue. Arthur always did like secrets. I almost laughed. Arthur hated secrets. He liked records. Mr. Lawson began with the standard language. Debts, expenses, personal property, specific gifts. Arthur left his tools to a neighbor who had helped repair the porch. He left a set of old military letters to a cousin who had been researching the family. He left Elaine his mother's china, which made her cover her mouth and whisper, "Oh." Then Mr. Lawson reached the major assets. To my niece and ward Hannah, I leave my residence, its contents except as otherwise specified, my primary financial accounts, my vehicle, and the residue of my estate. No one spoke at first. I felt no triumph, just a sudden pressure behind my ribs. The house, his accounts, his old car with the blue tag shed key still on the ring, his books, his mugs, his recliner, his notes on the refrigerator. All the ordinary evidence of a life that had held mine together. Mr. Lawson continued. I also appoint Hannah as custodian of my personal papers and family records, subject to the instructions maintained by my executor. Carol's tissue stopped halfway to her face. That can't be right. Mr. Lawson looked at her. It is the executed will. All of it. The residue of the estate, yes. She turned to me. What did you do? I did not answer. Her voice rose. What did you say to him? Hannah did not prepare this will, Mr. Lawson said. Carol pushed her chair back a few inches. She lived with him. She controlled who saw him. She had years to turn him against his own family. I looked at Richard. He did what he had always done. Nothing. Elaine touched Carol's wrist. Let him finish. No. This is wrong. Carol looked around the room, gathering faces. Arthur believed in blood. He would never cut out his own brother. Richard finally spoke, barely above a murmur. Carol. She ignored him. She walked away from us once. Now she wants Arthur's money too. Every person at the table turned toward me. The old feeling came back so quickly that for 1 second I was 13 again, sitting beside 2 trash bags while adults decided which version of me was easiest to discard. Then I saw the sealed envelope. I saw Arthur's handwriting. I heard his voice. Correct the record once. After that, watch what people do with the correction. Careful, Mom, I said. She blinked. Mr. Lawson's hand rested beside the envelope. Carol pressed the tissue to her chest. Do not call me that with contempt. I am still your mother. You should be careful about what you say next. Her face changed. Not guilt. Calculation. What is that supposed to mean? Mr. Lawson spoke before I could. Mrs. Carroll, are you asserting that Hannah voluntarily abandoned your household at age 13 and manipulated Mr. Arthur into assuming her care? Carol looked at him as if he had just offered her a stage. Yes, that is exactly what happened. Richard shifted in his chair. Mr. Lawson continued. And are you making that assertion as part of a claim that the will is invalid, or that you and your husband are entitled to a portion of the estate? I am saying I will take this to court if I have to. The room went still. Mr. Lawson asked, You intend to contest the will? Yes. Elaine whispered. Carol, maybe slow down. But Carol was committed now. I lost my daughter once, she said, her voice trembling in the way she used when she wanted pain to sound like proof. I will not let her steal from this family too. I looked at Mr. Lawson. Then we should probably open the envelope Arthur left for exactly that sentence. For the first time, Carol looked uncertain. Mr. Lawson turned the envelope over and broke the seal. The sound was small. It changed the room anyway. He removed a handwritten letter, several certified documents, copies of bank records, a bundle of returned envelopes held with a paper band, and a printed transcript clipped to an index card containing a small digital audio device. Carol stared. Richard went pale. That was when I knew he recognized at least some of it. Mr. Lawson put on his glasses. Article 9 of Mr. Arthur's will contains a conditional instruction. It applies if any biological relative challenges Hannah's inheritance by alleging that she voluntarily abandoned her parents, coerced Mr. Arthur into taking her, or improperly influenced his estate plan. Carol opened her mouth. Mr. Lawson lifted one finger. I am not finished. She closed it. In that event, the executor is directed to release supporting records to all interested parties, and if necessary, to the probate court. The will further provides a nominal bequest of $1 to any parent who advances such a claim, in place of any discretionary settlement that might otherwise be considered. Carol looked at him. $1. If you proceed with the challenge described, yes. This is intimidation. It is an estate provision. He cannot punish me for seeking justice. Mr. Lawson picked up the first document. This is a courthouse-certified copy of the guardianship order entered 15 years ago. It identifies Mr. Arthur as Hannah's legal guardian, and states that both biological parents consented. Carol waved one hand. We were under pressure. He placed the page down and lifted the next. This is the notarized consent signed by you and Richard. It describes the transfer as voluntary and continuing. It states that Hannah was not to be returned to your household absent Mr. Arthur's written consent and further court review. Elaine turned toward Richard. Did you know? Richard rubbed his wedding ring. It wasn't that simple. Mr. Lawson read the signature lines aloud. Carol, Richard, both witnessed and notarized. Carol's eyes moved around the table. You don't understand what I was going through. I said. I understand what you signed. She pointed at me. You were out of control. I was 13. You made that house unbearable. Richard murmured. Carol, stop. No. She wants everyone to think we threw her into the street. You put my clothes in trash bags. That was one night. It was the night you gave me away. Mr. Lawson lifted the financial agreement. There is more. Richard closed his eyes. Mr. Lawson explained the document in precise language. Arthur had paid $18,000 to resolve Carol and Richard's claimed expenses, secure their cooperation with the guardianship, and end future financial demands related to my care. He placed the bank statement beside it. The cashier's check was deposited 3 days after the agreement was signed. The copy bears both endorsements. Caleb looked from the paper to my parents. What check? Carol answered too quickly. It was reimbursement. For what? He asked. Things were complicated then. How old was she? No one answered him. He looked at me. How old were you when they signed that? 13. His face tightened. Mr. Lawson picked up Arthur's handwritten letter. The page was dated 2 weeks after I moved in with him. To my executor, he read. I am preserving this account because Carol has already begun telling relatives that Hannah chose to leave. That is false. Carol whispered. He hated me. Mr. Lawson continued. Carol told me by telephone, quote, she's your problem now. When I asked whether she wanted scheduled contact, she said she did not want Hannah returning to the house or upsetting Caleb. Richard was present for portions of these discussions and signed every operative document. Elaine looked at Richard again. Did you know she was telling us Hannah ran away? Richard's mouth opened, then closed. Caleb stared at him. Dad, Richard said, your mother handled most of that. I felt something inside me go cold and clear. Your silence was not neutral, Dad. It was cover. He flinched at the word Dad more than the accusation. I didn't want to make things worse. For whom? He looked down. Mr. Lawson moved to the printed transcript. This is a transcript of a voicemail left for Mr. Arthur approximately 4 months after the guardianship began. The original audio has been preserved. Carol stood up. I am not listening to some recording made without my permission. It is a voicemail you voluntarily left, Mr. Lawson said. And you may sit down or leave. The reading will continue either way. For a moment I thought she would walk out. But leaving meant losing control of the room, and Carol could not tolerate that. She sat. Mr. Lawson pressed a button on the small device. My mother's younger voice filled the conference room. Arthur, tell Hannah to stop calling Elaine and making this into a family production. She wanted to live with you so she can live with the choice. I don't want her coming back here and confusing Caleb. We are trying to move on. The recording clicked off. No one moved. I had never heard that voicemail before. My hands were flat on the table, but I could no longer feel the surface beneath them. She wanted to live with you. Even in private, Carol had rewritten the moment. Even when speaking to the man who had carried my trash bags to his car, she had needed me to be the person who left. Caleb's voice was quiet. You told me she left us. Carol turned toward him immediately. I was protecting you. From her. From adult problems you could not understand. He looked at the documents. Or from what you did. Her face collapsed into fresh tears. You have no idea what I sacrificed for this family. Caleb pushed his chair back but did not stand. Was anything you told me about her true? Of course it was. What? Carol looked at him without an answer. Mr. Lawson untied the paper band around the bundle of envelopes. These are birthday cards Mr. Arthur helped Hannah send at ages 14 and 15. Both were returned unopened. The postal marks and return labels are intact. He passed them toward the center of the table. I recognized my own handwriting immediately. Mom, Dad, and Caleb. The letters were uneven because I had written the address while crying. I had forgotten the stickers on the back. Small silver stars. At 14, I had thought maybe making the envelope look cheerful would make them open it. Caleb reached for the top card, then stopped before touching it. You sent these? Yes. Mom said you never contacted us. I tried twice, Carol said. Arthur could have staged that. Mr. Lawson looked over his glasses. The postal marks predate the estate dispute by 14 years. That doesn't prove what was inside. I reached into my purse and removed the plain manila envelope Mr. Lawson had given me. I did not wave it around. I placed it on the table and took out my certified copies. The guardianship order is a court record, I said. The agreement has both your signatures. The bank statement shows the deposit. Arthur's copy is not the only copy. Carol looked at me with an expression I knew well. It was the look she used when anger failed and she began searching for shame. You planned this. No. Arthur planned for you. You wanted to humiliate me. I wanted to bury him. You sat there and let me speak. Yes. Why? Because you have spent 15 years telling everyone I abandoned you. I wanted there to be no confusion about what you were claiming today. She looked around the table. Do you see what she is doing? She is enjoying this. There was a time when that accusation would have made me panic. I would have rushed to prove I was not cruel, not angry, not vindictive. I would have softened the truth until it no longer threatened anyone. I did not do that. Part of me wanted you to feel 1 minute of what you made me feel for 15 years. I said. That doesn't make the documents false. Elaine lowered her eyes. Carol turned to her. You know what she was like. You know how difficult she was. Elaine looked up slowly. No, she said. I know what you told me she was like. That was the first crack in Carol's audience. One of the other relatives pushed away from the table and stood. I need some air. His wife followed without looking at Carol. Carol's breathing became louder. Blood is blood, she said. Arthur would never have wanted this division. I looked at the pile of paper between us. You don't get to call me family only when there's money on the table. I am your mother. You lost the right to use that as leverage. I lost my daughter. No. You didn't lose me. My voice stayed level. You signed me over. Richard finally looked at me. Hannah, it wasn't as cold as you're making it sound. I turned to him. You let her put my clothes in trash bags. We thought staying with Arthur was best. Then why did you tell everyone I ran away? I didn't tell everyone that. You stood next to her while she did. I didn't want to make things worse. You keep saying that like doing nothing was kindness. His face reddened. I was trying to keep the family together. There was no family together. There was Carol, there was her story, and there was everyone she blamed to keep it clean. Carol slapped one palm against the table. Enough, Mr. Lawson said. Mrs. Carroll, lower your voice. She ignored him and looked directly at me. You owe Caleb. You owe your father. Whatever anger you have toward me, they should not be punished. Caleb stared at her. Don't use me. She turned to him. I am trying to protect your future. By taking her inheritance? By making sure one person does not steal everything. I said, Arthur left you nothing because you were not part of his life. He was Richard's brother. And Richard did not visit him while he was dying. Richard winced. Carol looked at Elaine, desperate now. Tell her to keep the peace. Elaine's eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. I told her that for years because it was easier than asking you a hard question. Carol's face hardened. So now everyone is against me. No, Elaine said. Now everyone has read the paperwork. Carol looked back at me. You think those papers make you innocent? I am not arguing with a story that has signatures attached to it. You were not an easy child. I did not have to be easy to deserve a home. The room went silent again. I slid one certified copy of the transfer agreement toward the middle of the table. If you want to talk about family in front of everyone, then everyone gets to hear what you signed away. Carol stared at her own signature. She called the papers old misunderstandings. She said Arthur had pressured them. She said the money had been for household costs. She said I was twisting a desperate family decision into abandonment. Every explanation shifted the blame but left the facts untouched. Finally, I said the sentence I had been carrying since I saw the financial agreement in Mr. Lawson's office. I was 13. I didn't abandon a family. A family signed me away, cashed the check and blamed me for surviving it. No one defended her. Not even Richard. Mr. Lawson let the silence stand before returning to the will. Because Mrs. Carroll has asserted an intention to contest the estate on the grounds specified in Article 9, the conditional clause is now operative. Any further claim should proceed through counsel. Be advised that a probate challenge would place these documents into the public court record, and could expose the challenger to costs if the claim is found to lack a reasonable basis. Carol's eyes widened. You're threatening me. I am explaining the consequences. What about Richard? Mr. Lawson looked at him. Mr. Richard has not stated a claim today. If he joins one on the same grounds, the same provision applies. Richard immediately said, I'm not contesting anything. Carol turned on him. You coward. The word landed with almost comic accuracy. Richard's face twisted. You're the one who kept pushing. I looked at him. No. Don't do that. He blinked. You don't get to blame her for the public disaster, while pretending you were not part of the private decision. Your signature is on the same page. He looked away again. That was the closest Richard ever came to accountability. Silence after the escape routes were blocked. The meeting ended 20 minutes later. Mr. Lawson explained the remaining probate process. I signed acknowledgments. Elaine cried quietly. Carol used 3 more tissues and told anyone who would listen that I had humiliated her at her brother-in-law's will reading. But the room no longer moved around her tears. The performance was the same. The audience had changed. As people gathered their coats, Elaine approached me. I should have asked you years ago, she said. Yes, I replied. You should have. She nodded as if she had expected something softer and knew she had not earned it. I believed the easier version. I know. I'm sorry. I believe you're sorry. It was not forgiveness. It was not punishment either. It was simply the most honest thing I could give her. Richard tried to speak to me near the door. Hannah, maybe when things settle. Further communication about the estate goes through Mr. Lawson. I'm not talking about the estate. You have had 15 years to talk about something else. His shoulders dropped. I didn't know how. That was your responsibility, not mine. I left him standing there. Carol called me 11 times that afternoon. I did not answer. Her messages moved through predictable stages. The first said she wanted to explain. The second said the documents did not tell the whole story. The fourth said I was destroying Caleb's relationship with his parents. The seventh said Arthur had poisoned me. The 10th said she would pray that money did not make me cruel. I forwarded all of them to Mr. Lawson and asked him to send formal notice that future estate-related communication had to go through his office. He did. After that, the calls stopped. The family reaction was uneven. 2 relatives apologized in text messages that somehow included excuses for themselves. We only knew what Carol told us. We thought staying neutral was best. We hope everyone can move forward now. I answered none of those. One relative sent, blood is blood, followed by a paragraph suggesting I give my parents a portion of the estate as a gesture of healing. I blocked the number. Elaine called once and left a short message. She did not ask me to forgive anyone. She said she had found an old email from Carol claiming I had refused Christmas invitations that I had never received. She sounded sick. I saved the message and did not call back right away. Carol told several relatives that I had ambushed her with private family documents. That version lasted less than a week because the people in the room had seen her threaten court before the envelope was opened. She also claimed Arthur's will was the product of my influence. Mr. Lawson responded through counsel with a copy of the no contest provision and a reminder that Arthur had completed a capacity evaluation when he signed the will. There was no lawsuit. Carol accepted the symbolic $1 bequest by certified check after her attorney apparently advised her that refusing it would not improve her position. I kept a copy of the delivery receipt. Arthur would have approved. Richard did not challenge the estate. He did not apologize either. According to Elaine, he blamed Carol for turning the reading into a circus. Carol blamed him for failing to defend her. Their marriage did not end, but the old arrangement cracked. Richard could no longer pretend he was merely a passenger, and Carol could no longer use his silence as unanimous support. Some relatives stopped inviting them to gatherings. Others still did, but the tone changed. When Carol cried, people no longer treated the tears as evidence. Caleb waited 3 days before contacting me. His text was brief. Can I get copies of what was read? I don't want Mom's explanation. I want the actual documents. I stared at the message for a long time. He had been a child too. Carol had used him as an audience for a lie, and then as a reason to keep me away. But being another victim did not automatically make him safe for me. I replied, Mr. Lawson can provide copies. I need one boundary first. He answered, okay. No messages from Mom. No requests for money. No asking me to fix things between you and her. If you contact me, it has to be because you want a relationship with me, not access to the estate or a bridge back to her. Several minutes passed. Then he wrote, I understand. I'm sorry I believed her. I typed and deleted 3 responses before sending one. You were 7 when I left. I'm not punishing you for believing the only story you were given. What matters is what you do now. Mr. Lawson gave him copies of the guardianship order, the transfer agreement, the financial record, Arthur's letter, the voicemail transcript, and scans of the returned birthday cards. Caleb did not immediately choose sides or make dramatic declarations. He asked questions. He asked whether I remembered him watching from the stairs the night I left. I said yes. He said he remembered the trash bags but had been told they were mine because I had already packed to leave. He asked whether I hated him. I said no. He asked whether I trusted him. I said not yet. He accepted that. Our first meeting was at a quiet diner, not the one Arthur had taken me to, but similar enough that the smell of coffee and syrup made my chest ache. Caleb arrived early. He had a folder with copies of the documents, but he kept it closed. For the first 10 minutes we talked about harmless things. Music. A bad movie. The way Arthur used to correct people's grammar under his breath. Then Caleb said, Mom told me you left because Arthur promised to pay for everything. He promised I would have a room. She said you hated me. I didn't. She said you wouldn't come home because you didn't want to share attention anymore. I stirred my coffee. She told Arthur she didn't want me coming back because I would confuse you. He looked toward the window. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with all of this. You don't have to do anything today. What are you going to do? Keep my boundaries. With them. With everyone. He nodded slowly. Before we left, he asked, do you really still have the birthday cards? The ones Arthur gave me, yes. No. The ones you sent us. Mr. Lawson has the originals in the estate file for now. Can I see them sometime? Yes. That was all I promised. Probate took months, but the major questions were settled. The house transferred to me. Arthur's primary accounts were released. His old car started on the second try, which felt like him. I did not sell the house. For a while I changed almost nothing. His mug stayed beside the sink. The recliner remained angled toward the television. The handwritten note about light bulbs stayed on the refrigerator until the tape curled and fell off by itself. Grief lived in ordinary objects. Eventually, I repaired the porch, replaced the failing water heater, and turned the storage room that had once become my bedroom into a clean guest room. I kept the crooked lamp. I also used part of the inheritance to establish a small fund in Arthur's name for teenagers who suddenly lose safe housing. It does not solve everything. It helps with emergency motel rooms, school supplies, winter clothes, transportation, document fees, and the kinds of basic expenses adults dismiss until a child has none of them. The first time I reviewed an application for a 13-year-old who needed a safe place after being pushed out, I had to leave the room and breathe. Arthur had not left me a prize. He had left me proof that I was worth protecting, and enough resources to make that protection extend beyond me. Elaine invited me to a family dinner 6 months after the will reading. Her message said, maybe it is time for everyone to move past this for peace. I declined. Peace still seemed to mean sitting at a table with people who had blamed a child because questioning an adult was uncomfortable. I was no longer available for that kind of peace. Carol sent one letter through a relative. I returned it unopened. Richard sent a birthday card with no apology inside, only, I hope one day we can talk. I placed it in a separate drawer far from Arthur's cards. Caleb and I remained in limited contact. Some weeks we texted twice. Some months not at all. He stopped carrying Carol's messages after the first time. I reminded him of the boundary. When she told him to ask whether I would pay one of their bills, he told her no and did not pass the request to me until weeks later, when he mentioned it as an example of why he was moving out. I did not rescue him. I did not punish him. I let him make his own choices. That was more respect than either of us had been given as children. The certified documents now sit in a plain envelope beside the shoebox under my bed. I do not keep them because I want to relive what happened. I keep them because for 15 years, people treated my memory like an accusation and my mother's performance like fact. The cards show who chose me. The papers show who did not. At the will reading, I did not expose Carol because I wanted a dramatic revenge scene. I exposed her because she stood in a legal proceeding, in front of the same family she had misled for years, and tried to turn me into the greedy child who abandoned everyone all over again. She chose the audience. Arthur supplied the record. I simply refused to protect the lie. I did not win because Carol and Richard lost the inheritance. I won because they lost the right to call my survival a betrayal. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.